Welcome to the Shutter Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Blue. Join me each week as we dive into amazing conversations with some of our industry's top leaders. We will talk about photography, business, and most of all, share the stories that have laid the foundation to our journey in this world we call photography. A couple of ways to support the show is to like, subscribe, and share the show with others. Leave those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and if you're a fan of seeing us live, we are on YouTube. Also, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Again, thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome all to another episode of the Shutter Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Blue. I've been away for a couple weeks. We took a little break post all the conferences and everything, but we're back at it. 2-week break is over, so vacation time is over, and the play time is now beginning again. With me this week is a good friend, a mentor, teacher, mother, wife, but most of all, a photographer, an amazing photographer at that. We got Lori Poole on the line today. Lori, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for making time today and coming on this the high-low budget show, as we call it.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's hop right into it because, obviously when they hear the last name, that means that I had your husband on some episodes back. So, the questions to ask you and Jeff, how did that come about? I heard his version of the story years ago, and I want to hear yours.
Okay. Well, we actually met at WPPI. We kind of met in passing without even really realizing that we met in 2008. And then we met again in 2009 and just had a really great time. You know how conferences are, like you make your convention buddies and you keep in touch with everybody afterward. And so we were chatting and we're like, wait, you're friends with so-and-so? I'm friends with so-and-so. Like I hung out with him the whole time last year. How did we not meet? And then we realized that we actually went to a group dinner together the first year as part of that, convention family that we made. So it just kind of started out as friends. And then eventually that turned into more. And by the following WPPI, I had moved out to Wilmington and we started our studio together.
That's right. You're a Cali girl, right?
Yes.
Nice. What part?
I'm from San Diego County originally. So I was born in Orange County, grew up in Oceanside, which is North San Diego County. And then I just kind of kept making my way further south. So I went to college at UCSD, which is in kind of northern San Diego. And then grad school was in San Diego State. And so I just kept going. Yeah. It's a good thing Jeff rescued me because, before you know it, I would have been down in Tijuana. I was moving south. You never know.
Exactly. Get great tequila though, right? Would have been made for some great stories, some great photography. Couple cricket photos, but it works out. So we have
Okay, let's be honest. The Mexican food in North Carolina, it leaves a lot to be desired. That's one of the things I miss about California.
I'm just gonna say there is no Mexican food in North Carolina. You got a good barbecue, but I will never say you have Mexican food.
Yeah.
This is the Texas in me.
Yeah, so Tex-Mex is different than Baja Mex, but even still, I'll take that over Carolina Mex. It's not a thing. No, this is how bad it is. When Jeff came out to visit me one time, like when I was still in San Diego and we were doing the long distance thing, and I'm like, we're going out for Mexican food, and he's like, ooh, I don't really know. Like every time I have Taco Bell, it really messes with my stomach, and I was just like.
Did he just say Taco Bell?
Sir.
Oh.
That
I
is
have to educate
absolutely no. So we went out for Mexican food in Old Town San Diego, which is like some of the best Mexican in San Diego. And we were having lunch with my mentor. And Jeff ordered like a ground beef burrito or something like that. And then he got up to use the restroom. And my mentor looked at me and he's like, did he just get ground beef? And I'm like, North Carolina. And he calls the waiter over and he's like, hey, that ground beef burrito, change it to carne asada at least. Let's show him what Mexican food is. So now I've gotten him on board. He actually likes Mexican food. He likes margaritas. I'm still working on him on avocado. We're not quite there yet, but it's getting better.
Avocado's acquired taste. So you mentioned your mentor. So let me ask you, who was the one that kind of got you in the game, or who did you seek the your tutelage under?
Yeah. So that's kind of there's like the short answer and the long answer. So the mentor that we were meeting with, his name is Sean Capshaw.
Okay.
The longer story, though, is when, okay, let me think. Let's rewind. Okay, in undergrad, I was an art major and a psychology major. I did a double major. And as an elective for my art major, I took a photography class. And this was circa 2000, 2001-ish. I'm showing my age. But I distinctly remember the professor saying, they're starting to come out with these, they're calling them DSLRs. It's never going to take the place of film. Like, y'all can rest on that. And in some ways, he's true, right? Like, we're still finding ways that film captures a different dynamic range than digital. But that class was all film. It was like dark room. So I'm one of the few people that is in photography today that has actually been in a dark room, which is really cool. But it was just like a 1-semester elective. Well, fast forward to grad school. I was in grad school for, I have my master's in psychology. And I was just kind of burnt out on academia. And I was like, I need to take a break. I need to get back to doing something creative. And any of us who are creatives, I think we've all felt that itch at some point, where if you run away from creativity for too long, you burn out and you feel like you need to get back into it. But at the time, being in grad school, I didn't really have the time to like draw and paint anymore. And I was like, well, what's something that's a little bit more like immediate gratification? And I was like, I've always wanted to learn more about photography. That one class I took was kind of cool. But by that time, everything was digital. I went out and listen, y'all, I was hot stuff. I went out and got my first digital Rebel, and I was determined to learn how to use it because there were so many buttons on there that just were not there on film cameras. What is white balance and what is all these things? You didn't have that with film. So I wanted to learn how to use my camera. I reached out to a wedding photographer, and I did the thing that we all have done at some point where we're like, hey, I just got this really cool camera and I want to learn how to use it. So like, can I follow you around? And like, yeah. And that photographer was very gracious, and he wrote back and he's like, actually, I'm moving away from San Diego, I'm moving to Palm Springs, but you should reach out to my friend Sean, which was the Sean that I referred to earlier. So I reached out to Sean and did the same thing. Hey, Chris sent me your way and I want to learn how to take pictures. And, can I like come and follow you around? And he did what most of us do, is like, listen, I don't have time to train you, but thanks. All right, fine. So I was shut down that route. So then I was like, well, I looked at the university has basically like night classes that you could take, that it's essentially like community college classes, but that so anyone can enroll in. You didn't have to be a student at the university. And I started looking at those classes and I was like, well, here we go. Here's another way that I can learn. And I enrolled in a class called Understanding Photographic Light. I was like, this sounds really cool. And it was like learning how to see light. Excuse me. Learning how to see light, understanding light and shadow, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, this sounds cool. And it was taught by a guy named Tony Corbell. Never heard of him. I figured he was like me, some weekend warrior that, was just teaching classes for fun to people that just got their first cameras. I show up to class on the first day and he shows a slideshow of his work. It's all of these amazing photos. And I was like, that's George Bush. That's the UN Council. Who is this guy? And then there's, quotes that are overlaid and totally paraphrasing, but they were basically endorsements by like, the conferences and magazines that we all know today that I had never heard of. And it was like, Tony Corbell is the master of light, says WPPI. And Tony Corbell is the greatest thing since sliced bread, says, Professional Photographer magazine, or whatever they were. And I was like, oh, so this guy, he's the real
legit.
deal. Like, yeah. He's kind of important. I had no idea. I just enrolled in this class, and like, how lucky was I that that Tony, gave back to the community in that way? Because like, when you're at his level, he's just teaching these classes at night for fun, just in his spare time because he can, which is really cool. And that was really my first glimpse at somebody giving back to the community, which obviously, we try and do now. But in any case, I signed up for that class, and people were in that class for all different reasons, but there were some of us that were truly in it just to learn the art of photography. And he's basically like, you, and you, I'm taking you guys, you're going to come join this group. You're going to come to this meeting with, some of my friends and other photographers in the area. And the meeting that he took us to was the PPA local affiliate. It's called Professional Photographers of San Diego County. I show up to my first meeting, all like wide-eyed and, ready to meet people and everything. And I have to check in at the desk, and the hospitality director is in charge of greeting all of the new attendees that week and, kind of introducing them to people and getting them their name tags. And the hospitality director was Sean Capshaw, the same guy that I had reached out to earlier that had shot me down. So I think when I showed up at that meeting, he's like, oh, okay, so you're actually serious about wanting to learn this. And then he took me under his wing. So I started second shooting weddings for him and just kind of learning about PPSDC was really involved in print competition. They had competitions every other month. So I learned a lot being involved in that group and through Sean's tutelage and also, with Tony kind of taking me under his wing. So I really kind of think of both of them as my first mentors because it all sort of happened at the same time. And I probably wouldn't have met or furthered my relationship with Sean without Tony having brought me to that meeting. So I don't know if you can see in the background, those are my PPA degrees and like my lanyards and stuff. When I got my first degree, Tony was my sponsor to walk me across the stage and hang the lanyard on my neck. So it's pretty cool. Like it's fun. We still see each other at all the conferences and it's always hugs all the way around.
Nice. And I do see the degrees, and which is something that I've been putting off for years, and I keep saying I'm going to do it. And then somebody recently mentioned to me to say, hey, when you get your degree, who's going to be the one to put your lanyard on? I go, I don't know at this point. Like, I don't know who I would want to ask. I was like, can I get like 6 people up there? Cause like, I'm influenced by like so many people and everything. And that's what's kept me in the game. But nah, it's cool. It's cool. Cause I know the name Tony Corbell is definitely, it's a legend name. It's a name that I've come across numerous times in my journey. So that's awesome. So from California to North Carolina. So let me ask you this, when, cause you're now mainly known for boudoir. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that right?
But that's what I shoot full time now. Yes.
So the transition, that was going to be my segue. Is you went from kind of like, I mean, when I met you, it was wedding photography, husband wife team, killer. Now when we hear the husband wife team, everybody does. Half of us go, oh, cool, and the other half roll our eyes. Like, are they a husband wife team, or are they just this husband wife team for show? Is this crazy dynamic? And then it's like I see, it's like wow, it's like. It's almost like 2 cool personalities. And it's like, how is this working out? And then like watching you and Jeff, like when I first saw you guys, it was like, this is like a cool like mixture. It's like they, almost like the opposites attract kind of thing. Because it's like you see Jeff, you'll see like light and airy stuff, and then you'll see Lori this intense lighting, and it's like, oh, but then it's like then they combine it, and it's like, oh, it's like a perfect like symmetry of a storytelling, so to speak. So, but the question I'm going is, so when you went from the portraits and the weddings, everything, all the way to boudoir, what kind of made that transition to being full-time with boudoir?
I think, when you're doing photography, it's always an evolution, right? So when I first moved out here and we joined forces with our studio, we were one of those studios that specialized in everything. So we did maternity, we did babies, we did weddings, we did portraits, we did headshots, we even did the occasional boudoir. It wasn't as popular as it is now, but we literally did a little bit of everything. And along the way, we would come up to a genre that, we just weren't fulfilled by. And I think the first one that we dropped was like maternity and babies. And we sort of took a vote. We had a studio assistant at the time, and we're like, okay, between the 3 of us, does anybody ever want to shoot a newborn ever again? And we're all like, nope. And we're like, okay, that's gone. So we're just going to refer out whenever somebody asks. And then, the pool of things that we were trying to market and trying to chase got smaller. We had one less genre that we had to work toward. And that was both a smart move and a dumb move. Made a lot of mistakes along the way. A lot of what I learn and a lot of what I teach now as a mentor is based on things that I did that were dumb. So saying that we're never going to shoot something when someone comes to you and has money in their hand and says, I will pay you to do this, and then you say, I don't want your money, that's dumb. Don't do that. But what was smart was reducing what we were actually going to chase. So you can take any job that comes your way. If someone comes to you with money, like, and you have the time to do it, take the job. Don't ever turn away clients. But it doesn't mean that you have to market it. You don't have to have a page on your website for it. You don't have to run ads for it. You don't have to figure out how to get clients for that. That is energy that if you try and invest in everything that you can shoot, you're going to spread yourself too thin. So we learned really quickly that it is actually better to focus our efforts, but we also learned not to turn away business. One of the ways that we learned that is a wedding that we photographed. I think this was probably around 2014. A wedding that we photographed was one of our largest weddings to date. And they came back to us when they wanted newborn portraits. And we said, well, you need to go see Katie because we don't shoot newborn portraits, thinking they would go to Katie for the newborn portraits and then they would come back to us, for their family and so forth. They never came back to us. Once we sent them to Katie, they stayed with Katie. And we're like, that was dumb. We just gave away our biggest client ever because we weren't willing to photograph something, that our clients wanted us to photograph. So we kind of realized in that moment, like, okay, don't turn away clients, especially when they're past clients. So now, even with our past clients, we do still photograph their newborn. We do still photograph their maternity. We just don't market for it. I'm not out there, in all the mom groups, advocating for, newborn services or what have you. But kind of more back to your question is like along the way, you learn things that don't fulfill you and you start picking up things that do fulfill you. And where I really got into boudoir is Jeff and I invested heavily in learning the business side of photography. Because again, we did a lot of things wrong early on in our studio. And our first year out of the gate, we operated at a net loss. Seeing red is not a good sign. So, we really invested in learning how to run a business and, stopped spending so much of our effort on learning how to operate the camera. And part of what we learned is how to analyze the seasonality of our finances, right? Weddings are very, very seasonal. At the time, we were also still doing a lot of seniors, which is also seasonal, and those seasons happen to overlap. So, like, if you graphed out our income over the year, it would be like, January's here and then through the spring it goes up. And then summer it dips a little bit because it's hot here, kind of like it is in Texas.
Yep.
And then fall it spikes. And then winter is just like it's down here. It's winter. We started calling it ramen noodle season. Winter sucks if you mainly do weddings and seniors. And so I was like, I got to figure out something to make this winter not suck so bad. And so we had, maybe one or two clients a year that would ask us to do boudoir. It's usually was our own wedding clients that were wanting to do it before the wedding. And I was like, this is a thing that I could do. I can set up a Valentine's Day event where we would deliver the products for Valentine's Day, which means I'm shooting in January, which means I'm booking these in December, which means I'm marketing in November and October. And when you start looking at your calendar in that way, you realize there's a lot more, you can't just market last minute for something like that. So really that first event kept us busy throughout the winter season because, we're taking bookings through November and December for their initial booking. Then I'm shooting and of course upselling through IPS throughout January. So that really evened out our winter time. And that's really where it started. It kind of took off from there. That was in 2016 was the first year that I did that event. But what really made the switch is I got into boudoir for the money. I was looking for something to fill up my calendar during the wintertime. But what happened is in that one day, I photographed 8 women, which is probably more than I had photographed my entire career up to that point. And up to that point, like I said, it was always our young brides that were doing it for their weddings. They just want, cute, sexy pictures to give to their husband. And I've never really been like the cute, sexy, flirty type. I'm kind of more your girl next door. So I didn't relate to those women and I didn't relate to why they wanted to have photos. But when I did this Valentine's Day event, most of the women that came in could care less if they had them in time for Valentine's Day. They were just looking to do boudoir. But every single one of them told me their stories. One of my clients that year had just gotten out of an abusive relationship, and she was doing this to like reaffirm all of the parts of herself that had been squashed during that relationship. Another one of my clients that year, she had recently lost her husband, and it was due to a long-term terminal illness. And if you've ever been a caretaker for someone that's ill for a very long time, you lose yourself in that. And I grew up with a very ill father, so I know what caretaking is like, and I know the toll that it takes on the rest of the family, to where like that person's needs come first always. You have to. It's a matter of survival. And when you're in survival mode for so long, you lose yourself. And so, he did unfortunately pass, but now she was at this point of like almost like an empty nester of like, what do I do now? Who am I now? Like, he's gone. All the things that took up my time are gone. Who am I now? And so she was searching for herself, and this was part of that journey. Another client was a breast cancer survivor. So just so many amazing stories about these women that were doing this as a self-affirmation that really had nothing to do with cute, sexy pictures for anybody else. This was for them and affirming themselves. And I fell in love with it right then and there. So, while I got into it for the money, I stayed for the passion. And it really did become a passion, to where by the time I think 2019 rolled around and we sat down, we were doing our annual planning for the year. And Jeff and I kind of had a talk of like, listen, boudoir's taking off. Up to that point, we had both done all the things. Like, I went with him and shot weddings, or we each shot weddings separately. We both did family portraits. We both did all the things. And at that point, we were like, what if we don't both do all the things? And we basically kind of broke it in half and said that I was going to take all of the boudoir and see if I could make like a full-time go at it, of like, that is my only job, is to market it, shoot it, sell it. I'm a boudoir photographer. And then he would basically take everything else. So his primary things that he pushes for are weddings and headshots. And I think he's wanting to grow a family market a little bit more, but that's essentially his business to run now. And even though it's all one business, like financially, legally, everything else, it's all Indigo Silver Studio, but we each kind of like run our halves or our divisions, to where that's all I do now. Like, I'm a full-time boudoir photographer. So, so it's been interesting. I think splitting it off in that way, gave us a little bit of freedom to each have something that we had ownership over, to where when we were full partners in everything, sometimes you feel like you don't have anything that's your own. So it was actually kind of empowering for both of us to have something to be like, okay, the success or failure of this rests on me. It's now my job to get this done. And then when I do have a success or I have a big sale, I can take pride in that, in knowing that like, I did that, I grew that, I cultivated that. And, the same for him, as he continues to shape his side of the business and his side of the brand.
Nice. I think it gives you both an opportunity to have your own voice within the company as well. Like,
yes,
having that ownership, it allows you to say, this is what I love, this is what I do. And it's almost like you get to each take a step back from time to time and watch the other person shine in their element, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
and honestly, I mean, it's, we're the type of couple that doesn't always get along, because we're both very passionate in our opinions. So like, when I think something is the right way to do it, it is the right way to do it, and there is no other way. And he thinks that his way is the right way. And then we're like, so this gives us the freedom to be able to pursue things how we want to do it, without getting in each other's way. And I think that's actually, strengthened our marriage and our partnership, to be able to, have agency, right? And also to be able, like, I'm a control freak. So for me to let go of control of something and be like, okay, fly baby bird, and I'm getting to see him as a more complete person, instead of, something that I had to have a hand in. So it's good both ways. Like, it's good for how we view each other. It's also good in reducing a little bit of that, adversary kind of style that we had as well. And it just gives us, freedom.
nice. So with boudoir, what's been some of your favorite stuff about that genre specifically?
I mean, really, it's kind of what I was telling you earlier. It's all the reasons that people come in to do it. And, part of this, those clients that day informed my why, because they gave me a reason to fall in love with this genre, where when I was doing it for like perfect 22-year-olds that have never had a scar or a stretch mark or a hard time in their life, and obviously I'm generalizing, but that was the type of clientele that we had before. And now that I've found how my passion is in helping, I help people like me that, maybe they have a little bit of arm jiggle, or maybe they have, scars, or they have stretch marks, or they don't feel like they fit the classic version of beauty, or, maybe they're a mom of a 2-year-old and sometimes they feel a little bit crazy if they don't get a moment to themselves. I'm not talking about myself at all right there. But the majority of my clients now are actually women in their 40s and 50s who, they've made it through toddlerhood. Their kids are usually, I would say most of my clients, their kids are like 6 through, college. So they've made it through the intense part of childhood and motherhood. And now they're starting to get that freedom back, and they're starting to look for, ways to find themselves again. Some of my clients haven't felt beautiful in a very long time. Some of my clients have not felt like anything other than mom in a very long time. Some of my clients have never seen themselves as beautiful. So if I can take a photo of somebody and I don't do a lot of post processing to my images. I usually, we talk about get it right in camera. I work with posing, lighting, angles, all of that to really help them shine without needing a whole lot of changing. I don't have to liquefy a whole lot. I don't try and, change their bodies or anything like that. So as we're shooting, I'm constantly showing them the back of the camera. I'll pick it up and be like, look at this one, look at your butt, it looks so good, or whatever, or oh my gosh, look at your skin, it's just beautiful. And I'm showing them these pictures as we're going along. They know that there's no Photoshop in my camera, and so they're seeing these photos and they're like, I can't believe that's me, I can't believe that's real. And that is the moment that I live for, because I feel like it sounds a little bit trite, but I feel like I'm changing lives, one life at a time. I'm helping one woman, believe for the first time that she's beautiful, or believe for the first time in a long time that she's beautiful, and just giving her a little bit of that power and that confidence back. And that's what I live for.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I totally know where you're coming from with that, because I do get that when the few times I do shoot boudoir, because like you, I'm weddings, but then I have brides that want to do something for their husband, and it isn't just the girl that's like, oh, I'm hot and I want to do a naughty look. It's like girls that are women, excuse me, that literally are like, I've never done anything like this, and they're super vulnerable in those moments, and it's like it's my job to capture the amazing in that vulnerability. And when I show them back the camera, and I get the holy shit, that's me, that right there, just I love it. It's a different type of high that I get out of photography now, because it's like, if I show, when I do seniors and I show the back of the camera to the mom, they're instantly gonna cry. It doesn't matter how bad I may think the picture is, they're gonna cry because they just see their little girl. The same thing
Right.
with the dad. He sees his little girl.
Right.
When they look at the wedding pictures, you're gonna see the person that you love. So it's like, but to almost singular it to that individual, and then they give me that holy shit, that's me moment. It's like, yeah, I totally understand that high, and I love it. And I think that's
Yeah.
what attracted me from Stead, like you, when I first would get brides to say, hey, do you do boudoir? And I was like, no, I know someone that does, and I would refer them out or whatever. I felt like I was losing that connection, because here they are doing this before their wedding day, and then on their wedding day, that trust that I built up kind of got, in a sense, not say diminished, because another photographer stepped in and got even a closer bond with that bride. And I was like, well, God,
Right.
two things needs to happen. Either I shoot it myself, or I'm present when it's happening and still having my kind of involved in it. Or, so first it was like, well, let me just be there when they're doing it. But then it's like, what if they're doing it at a time I'm not available? Let me just go ahead and figure out what I need to do as a man, how to shoot boudoir, and do it in a way that is, one, economically sound, and two, for lack of a better term, doesn't make me come off like a creeper, the goal for me was always, when I did boudoir, it wasn't like, oh, she's naked, boom. It's making it look artistic, making it look, can my parents see that? Can her parents see that and not freak out, but see the art, artistic beauty of the person that they love or whatever. So that has always been my goal. And it's never just been about, give me your sexist lingerie. I could just, now I'm at a point where I'm like, dude, give me a white t-shirt and I'll take care of the rest. I love those challenges, and, give me, give you, oh, you
Yeah.
think, oh, you don't think you look good? Watch this. I'm going to make you look amazing. It's like, I love those challenges, because I get when I first started, it was, man, how can I make this wedding look amazing? And I started, now that I figured that out, and I've, for lack of a better term, found my pacing with weddings, it's like boudoir has given me that new challenge now. With seniors, it's just like I get to have fun and be a kid again and be goofy and do the dad jokes, because now I have the 17-year-old. It's just like, that's the only time it gets hard for me to shoot seniors, when I'm shooting my daughter. So yeah, because it's like, I'm like, halfway photographer, the other
Yeah.
half being dad, going, "Oh my God, that's my little girl." But nah, definitely, I love the challenge that boudoir
I
gives
think
our
you touched
industry
on
and
a
everything.
really important point, though. Yeah. I think you touched on a really important point is that, you were saying like with seniors, mom's going to cry no matter what. Like you could take a terrible photo, mom is going to see the person that they love.
Mm-hmm.
And, same even with weddings is you're looking at the person you love, you're looking at the moment, you're looking at all of that. So generally speaking, those people are really easy to please.
Mm-hmm.
But I would hazard to say that there is nobody that is more hard on themselves, or I guess, like that's not really English. I think we are all our own worst critics, right? As
Yes,
creatives, we're our
absolutely.
own worst critics. But I think like the people that we're photographing, they are their own worst critics. So they're no longer looking at their child or their spouse or a moment. You have the additional challenge of somebody who is already hard on themselves and who already sees all of their own flaws intensely, and then being able to come up with a photo where they say, wow, so that it is a different dynamic than all of those other situations that you mentioned.
Oh yeah, definitely. So in the transition, I want to throw in there. So we mentioned Jeff, we mentioned the kiddo and everything. Balance. That's always been the new topic now, and I love talking to people that have a realistic approach to it. Not the I'm balancing. No, I'm like, dude, you've been married for 5 minutes, and you're newlywed married for 5 minutes, and you just start your first real job. Like you don't. This isn't work life balance yet. Like so,
Yeah.
because you and Jeff have been married now about it's been is it 7 or 8? I forget now. How long have you guys been married now?
Okay, so being wedding photographers ourselves, we
But-
took our sweet time planning our own wedding because it
Okay,
felt too much like work. So I moved here in 2010. Jeff proposed to me in 2011. We didn't actually get married until 2016. And
that's
it
what I
was
thought. Yeah,
only
okay.
because like finally that year I was like, all right, New Year's resolution, we have to get this done. Like I know it feels like work planning a wedding because we literally plan weddings all the time, but we got
Mm-hmm.
to do our own. So we've been married since 2016, but we've been together since, well, I moved here in 2010. We, started dating in 2009. So yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, I know you guys haven't been married 10 years, but I know you've been together for over 10 years. That's where I was trying to figure out that what was the number again. But yeah, so
Right.
being married now, and yes, he's 2, but I still say new mom because to me it still feels new until they hit like 4 and they ignore you. Until you
Yeah.
send them off to preschool, it's still a new kid. So
Mm-hmm.
marriage, new mom, business owner. What has been your go-tos on making it work, or do you feel like you're still figuring that out, or is it like have you kind of got your pacing with it?
I feel like it changes constantly, to be honest. Motherhood in particular, having a child changes constantly. Like, especially the younger they are, the more rapidly it changes, right? I
Mm-hmm.
remember going in for one of our first appointments when he was a newborn, and I'm like, I think I've got this figured out, and the pediatrician just laughed, and 3 weeks later we're back for our next one, and I'm like, it's already changed. Everything that I had figured out, then he changed, his nap schedule changed, his feeding, like everything changes. So life is kind of like that too, right? I'm the type of person that I don't really love change because I like having routine. I like safety. Like I play things very safe. And this is where Jeff and I balance each other out because he is a huge risk taker. So sometimes, I keep his feet on the ground. But sometimes he helps me to dream a little and to be a little more adventurous. So life is always changing. It would be one thing if the only thing we had to figure out was running a business. But then, even as we talked about, just since we started this business, we've changed from doing everything to, we took some things out, we added some things in. So that's always changing. Our roles in the business are constantly changing. Then we threw in, having a baby during COVID.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember that,
and
which I thought was
COVID
hilarious.
changed everything too, right?
Yes.
Like our clients now are so much more, everything's more internet based. Like you mentioned, you're going to, online sales. That would have been a whole lot harder, I think, pre COVID. And now we're all used to Zoom. We're all used to doing things virtually.
Oh yeah.
So everything
And
is constantly changing. The marketing game is constantly changing. Like this year, I've seen a huge shift in how people are marketing and what's working and what not. And then on top of that, of course, we threw in Lead Savage. So now we have this additional business that we're trying to run and get off the ground. So I don't 100% know that balance exists when things are constantly in flux and things are constantly changing. I think for me, what balance means is having boundaries. When I first moved here, I remember, Jeff would give his cell phone number out to all of his clients, and I was like, you got to cut that shit out. Like, because they'd be calling and texting at 11 o'clock, midnight, like whatever. And his two girls were pretty young at the time. They were 5 and 9 when I moved here. So like, we're trying to have family time on the weekends and whatnot. And so like one of the first things was like, okay, no more giving out your cell phone number. Like because we had a storefront. So like we had a business line, let them call that, let them send an email, let's start drawing boundaries. And then I think the next boundary that we started doing was like, no meetings on weekends. Like our clients are like, oh, well, I have a day job. Well, yeah, so do I. And this is my day job. So, you're going to take time off of work to go to the dentist or to get your hair done or, your doctor's appointments, like whatever else. This is the same thing. We have business hours. So we will take evening appointments as late as 6 o'clock. We don't take weekend appointments at all other than weddings. And like occasionally if a client's coming from out of town or something like that and they want to do their engagement session while they're here, like, okay. But we've really just tried to carve out time where we're not working. And, I feel like we hit a pretty good stride with that. And then we threw Lead Savage into the mix. So now we have this whole other business that we're trying to grow. And at the same time, having a 2-year-old makes it very hard because he doesn't go to daycare or anything like that. So one of us is always home with him. So like today, Jeff's home with Cameron and, I'm here working. So that has really limited our time. So we're looking at, I think one way to help is like figure out what can you outsource, right? So for a while, I used to outsource my editing. Now, like AI between Imagine and Evoto, it's getting so stinking easy. I don't really have to outsource that anymore. But use tools that can give you back time, whether that's outsourcing a service, whether that's hiring a VA. We've started looking at ways that we can outsource our personal life as well. I don't remember who I was seeing, if it was even a photographer or not, but it was somebody who's a business owner that was like, you can't feel guilty about outsourcing things in your personal life. You already know that you do it in your business life, that, you have someone to come and clean the studio, you have someone to take out the trash, like whatever. Do that at home, So we do have, we actually have the same cleaning service. We'll come and clean the studio and clean the house. We have recently, like this year, finally felt like, Cameron's pretty stable enough to where we can hire a babysitter that comes in a couple of days a week. And so even if I'm working from home, I can actually work as opposed to, entertaining my 2-year-old. So that gives me a little bit more time at home. So we're just always looking for ways to get our time back. And a lot of times that costs money to do. So we're trading money for time because you have to look at like, where are you the most limited? A lot of times when you're a new photographer, you're most limited with money. Like you have more time than money. So you're doing a lot of things yourself. As you grow as a studio, your time becomes your limited resource. You have money, so you trade your money to get your time back. So I think just looking for ways to do that, setting boundaries and looking for ways to get your time back and outsourcing different things, whether it's your personal life or your home life, that helps bring a feeling of balance, even if that feeling is more illusion than fact.
No, I totally get it. I remember like I made it a point, especially coming into this year, was to really automate as much as I can. Like I said, I got the editing automated with the, after shooting the Evoto. But where it really hit home for me was I was on a college tour with Jaden last year when she was, we were going down our loop, and I took a phone call during the tour. And I stepped away to take a phone call. I was gone maybe 5 minutes. And I walked back up to her and I said, "Hey, what's up, kiddo? What did I miss?" And the tour guy goes, "You missed everything, Dad," like that. And everyone kind of laughed. And in my head, it was like just that one little statement. I just felt like, I know he was joking or whatever, but it was just like, maybe I did miss everything. Maybe I did, and it's like, look at what I'm doing in this moment. I'm trying to convince this kid that going to college and growing is important, but here I am taking work calls. And I said, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
After that phone went to silent, I didn't take another phone call. And so now I've kind of made like the non-negotiables. When I'm eating dinner, I don't do any work during dinner. I don't, there's obviously exceptions to the rules or whatever, things like that. But I mean, like, when I'm with the kids, I'm with the kids. When I'm with my wife, I'm with my wife. I'm not sending out an email to a client. I got on 17 has to automate all my email responses. And, when I get inquiries, it used to be as soon as I see it come in, immediately like say something right away, because I want to be impressive. Like, oh wow, he got back to me within 10 minutes. That's amazing. He's available 24/7 versus, you know what, he's human like I am, and he has, times that he can work and times that he needs to rest and things like that. So now it's freed up my time to, allow me to dedicate things that I want to do, things for myself, my health, my fitness, being family time, rebuilding, as we're getting ready to have our first stage of empty nesting with Jaden going to college next year. And then we just have the youngest. It's like, oh, now we have a new approach of how we're going to spend time with the kid, make it all about the three of us now and go back to just my wife and just my wife and now the one kid. And then whenever Jaden's in town, we maximize that time with her. So it's like all these things are being built so I can have all that in the future. And I learned that, luckily I didn't have to learn it the super hard way, but I definitely know that feeling, trying to balance it all out. But like
Yeah.
cutting off some of the dead weight, so to speak, I think is just super important. And it's things that it's really weird that as a business owner, you find yourself negotiating, like, am I doing the right thing by outsourcing or putting this responsibility on someone else to do? Because we were taught as entrepreneurs, you have to do everything. You have to have your finger on the pulse, or you lose sight of your business, or you lose sight of your goals, and your clients get affected by it. But I think if you do it smart and you do it strategically, it makes it really easy. I think we need to promote that a lot more than, the hustle and the grind,
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
the hustle and the grind is just a recipe for burnout.
yeah, exactly. Your body can only hold up so long, and then it's like, oh yeah, I would love to like just spend quality time with you, but I'm so tired. I still need to do this and that. You're just like, no, you know what? I want to spend time. I want to have fun. I want to, show them how to eat what real Mexican food is. So we're gonna drive 40 minutes to a real Mexican spot. Like just those little things, like I think are still important. Not that I don't have
Yeah.
time, so I'm gonna eat crap dinner and feel like crap, and then I'm gonna be in a bad mood because I had a bad dinner. Versus, you know what? Let me just stop everything and let's go get this and let's go do that, and it's a lot more fun. But so let me
Yeah, I think taking those times to be present and to just,
Mhm.
enjoy things, depending on, like, there's so many things that almost become a thought habit, right? So like you were talking about, as entrepreneurs, especially when we first start out, we do everything. And then learning to let go of that, it's anxiety invoking of like, I'm not checking my email during dinner. What if somebody emails me right now and I don't get back to them in 10 minutes and then they don't book? Like, we have to interrupt that kind of thinking that has become a habit, right? And something that I've been talking with my mom about a lot lately is, I mentioned earlier that I grew up, my dad was very ill, and the health system being what it is in this country, naturally that meant that we had a lot of medical bills. And so money was always very, very tight. Like our vacations were in a tent, like all of our friends, they had their RVs and, they stayed in hotels. And like, there's a lot of things that you learn to do without when you grow up without money, and it becomes kind of like a poor mindset. And to this day, spending money invokes that same kind of anxiety in me that outsourcing invokes, in an entrepreneur that's used to doing everything themselves. So there are certain things that we have to learn to let go of. We have to retrain, and we have to say, you know what, like, screw it, I'm gonna go out to dinner tonight, and yes, it's gonna cost money and it's gonna be freaking delicious, because that's so much better than, living your whole life where you settled and where you didn't, just like take the time, YOLO, right? Where you didn't take
Mhm.
the time to go and have experiences and do the things. And so, like, in this season of my life, I'm focusing a lot more on being aware of those kind of thought processes that don't serve me, whether it's poor mindset, whether I have to do everything myself mindset, or control mindset. Because for me, like, the easiest way for me to handle something that's making me anxious is to control every factor of it. And that's a really good way to smother. So like, I have to be a lot more aware of, the things that I'm doing that are not actually helpful in my life, and learn to retrain those things. Whether it's taking phone calls, answering emails, outsourcing, spending money, like, you have to learn to do better ways of doing things.
Awesome, awesome. So we are approaching the 45-minute mark of our conversation, which has been amazing. And I knew you were going to deliver. That's why I said that I'm almost nervous when if I get one where I get you and Jeff on the screen, because this is going to be like definitely like a 2-parter, 3-parter even. But I want to close out 2 questions. The first one is, what's keeping you motivated right now in the industry, and then the final question will be the what's next for Lori.
So the audio cut out for just a minute. What was the second question?
The first question was what's keeping you motivated in the industry, and the second question is what's next for Lori.
Oh man. Okay. What's keeping me motivated? I think a lot of it is just like determination, right? Like failure is not an option is kind of a thing that a figure of speech that we hear a lot. But for me and Jeff, like this is our full-time business. And yes, we have Lead Savage, but it's still in its startup phase. So like, we with me and Jeff and Keisha and Margot, we kind of talked about it of like me and Margot, we're gonna go and be the breadwinners so that the boys can grow Lead Savage. So like, there's been that motivation of like, we can't fail at this because this is how we feed our family. This is how we have our livelihood. So I think everybody's in a different situation as to whether or not they're a full-time photographer, whether or not they have additional income or what have you. But we've been full-time in this, both of us have, since 2010. So there's not really an option to just not perform and just decide that we're not going to keep it up. It is exhausting at times, but during those days, it's like you just sit down and you put one foot in front of the other. You just say, what's the next step? Sometimes the big picture is too overwhelming. So you eat your elephant one bite at a time and you keep moving forward, but it's not really an option not to. As far as what's next, I've really been, I've been seeing a big shift this year. I will be totally honest. About probably a year and a half ago, I think, I was on a panel of photography speakers at the Wedding MBA in Las Vegas. It's a conference that is for all wedding vendors. So it's photographers, planners, whatever. And you know what? Come to think of it, I don't know if that's the conference where this happened. In any case, there was a conference I was speaking at, may or may not have been that one, but about a year and a half ago, before we really started seeing big shifts in the economy. But the rumors were starting to happen of like, oh, we might be having a downturn. And somebody in the audience asked me, are you concerned about the economy? And I answered probably with a little too much hubris and not quite enough humility. And I said, boudoir is a luxury service. So it's not something that people need. And the people that have money to invest in it probably aren't going to be affected by the economy. I was wrong, because I am seeing boudoir photographers across the board. I'm in 9 million photographers groups on Facebook, and I run my own photography group as well. Photographers across the board are definitely feeling it this year. It's, that post-COVID wave, the economy, the inflation, all of that. And you can argue about whether or not the economy is or isn't worse, because I brought this up to Jeff and he's like, well, some of the numbers are actually better. That may be true, but the perception is that the economy is in a bad place, and people's perception of the economy influences their decisions. So I'm seeing photographers across the board that are experiencing a huge downturn. Their marketing efforts aren't paying out, things like that. So it's really got me thinking about, what is the next step and how can I reinvent myself to appeal to a new crowd? So I'm actually looking on moving up even higher into the luxury market. I wouldn't ever say that I was luxury before. Like my boudoir averages, I think right now are around 4,500. That's really great, but it's not like ultra luxury by any means. And I think luxury is a term that is often misused. So I'm looking at like, how can I appeal to that clientele that really isn't affected by the economy? And how can I distinguish myself from all the other boudoir photographers, because the market is getting saturated with boudoir just like it was with weddings, so like, what are ways that I can distinguish myself? So that's really what I'm looking into now. A lot of it has to do with like, I want to remodel the studio. I want to build out sets that I know my competitors don't have. I want to come up with offerings that are unique, but I also want to find a way to serve my client even more so that they're drawn to me over just, picking a boudoir photographer from the lineup. So I think that's really where my thought process has been, with photography.
Nice, nice. Well, Lori, thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate you making time for me today. Where can we find you on social media at? Go ahead and plug it.
Okay, well that's that's a long answer. Okay, so my studio is Indigo Silver Studio, so you can look that up on social media. We do have a separate Instagram for boudoir versus weddings versus headshots. So there's Indigo Silver _boudoir if you want to see my work. If you want to know more about running a successful
Lori, I think
business and
you cut
figuring
out.
out, how to become more profitable and increase your sales systems, then that is going to be through my photo insight. And then, of course, we also have Lead Savage, which is our marketing division, and that's leadsavage.io.
You're gonna hate me for this. You right when you started talking, you cut out, so I didn't get any of your answers.
Oh, okay. Do you want me just to repeat my answer?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, your social medias.
Cool. Okay. All right. So we have several different presences on social media. One is for the studio itself, one is for photography, business, and coaching, and then one is for our marketing company, which is Lead Savage. So if you want to see more of my work, you can find me at Indigo Silver. My Instagram is Indigo Silver _boudoir. If you want to learn more about running a lean business, becoming more profitable, bringing up your sales averages, learning the best way to actually make money at this crazy game, then you can follow me at My Photo Insight. And then if you're interested in learning marketing and automation and doing some of that stuff that we talked about to free up your time so that you're not having to answer calls at dinner, then check us out at leadsavage.io.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that we plug everything in the show notes and, that everybody has a way to reach you. So again, thank you so much for today. It was awesome. I'm glad I got to finally catch up with you and finally, next time we do this, let's get, the pools on here. That's going to be a fun one. So.
Oh gosh. Yeah. We're definitely not finishing in 45 minutes if you get both of us.
Oh no, we're doing a 3-part episode and we're probably gonna have some alcohol involved.
There you go.
I'll pay for Cameron's sitter since I'm gonna pay for Cameron's sitter because it's gonna be a long time because Daddy doesn't stop talking.
Cheers to that.
All right. Thank you so much. You have yourself a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you. You too.
That's it for this week's show. Again, thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, and share with others. Leave those reviews and check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until then, see you next week.